Hello there, Cave Raider. Come to embark on your journey of no return, have you? Did you lose something? Are you seeking answers? Or maybe you don't know what pulls you along your way. All you can do is move forward. After all, it was never an option to go back. Not for you. First, let me say how happy I am to see you. You know, because of you, I've been able to participate in more discourse directed at me and my thoughts than I ever have in my entire life. If you're here for my cyberpunk video, or really here at all, thank you for your support and words of encouragement. I too will now continue wandering into
the abyss.
You know, the original Made in Abyss manga is really a spectacle to behold. Scenes that really emphasize the expansiveness in one image, motion splitting the light from the dark, the heaviness of the atmosphere painting the surroundings, the layer upon layer of cursed miasma from which no foreign body can ever evade. Beauty and grotesque. Calm and horrific, grounded and humbling, the Abyss is nothing if not a world of contradiction. We are fortunate to have an animated adaptation as lovingly and painstakingly crafted as the first conception itself was. They're different, no doubt, but they're also so close to each other, each providing unique aspects to the experience of traveling the netherworld, while maintaining an almost one-for-one recreation of events and faces. And what a world it is, a truly alien place to behold. I think Season 1 and Season 2 did a wonderful job of distinguishing what we are meant to feel the deeper we go. Season 1 gives us our world, an unknowable cavern with no bottom, the Abyss. Everyone wants to know about it, and for good reason. Some of the ancient artifacts it houses have the capacity to change power dynamics the world over. Fortune is enough of a reason to dip your toes in, but for those of us who want more, the Abyss is a temptation beyond reason. Every layer a new ecosystem to understand, every layer a bigger burden on your soul when you aren't dedicating yourself to it. It feels like such an easy concept. It's a big fucking hole in the ground, and each layer you descend becomes harder to return from. What's at the bottom, nobody knows. At least, nobody who could ever tell us. But boy howdy do we want to know. So creative, I couldn't have thought of it, I bet. I can think of like nothing else that encapsulates that drive to explore and forge ahead to learn more better than the Abyss. What's next? What's next? I have to know. I've heard this singular point, the final destination and great unknown, criticized as the only thing holding the story together. All we're here for is what's at the end. If it sucks, Made in Abyss sucks. I can't tell you how much I don't understand this perspective. Does the friends we made along the way truly mean nothing to you? Moreover, the events dotting the expedition that make our hero's journey. I can safely say that while it would be disappointing if I felt let down by the big secret, I could never forget the misery, the curiosity, and the joy of discovering what each layer of the Abyss offers to those daring enough to challenge it. The sheer amount of adoration for ecology on display is enough to see the magnificence. Let's take a little bit of a closer look. Layer 1 is easy, right? Fucking babies could waddle around here and make it back alive with a big sack of treasures to pawn off. Oh, you get a little headache, maybe a little pukey from climbing back up. Big deal. I get a headache just thinking about what I have to do tomorrow. But it's cool, right? Looks like Jurassic Park with big petrified trees, steep rock faces, and enormous waterfalls. All integrated well with the human population mining its resources. Yeah, you might get eaten by a really scary spider, but just like don't though. It's relatively safe. It's here that we can feel the warmth of a new day. The future is full of endless possibility and hope. Almost feels like we could stay here forever, but you know we can't. Riko sure can't. Her mommy's a famous spelunker, a white whistle cave raider, the most esteemed of ranks, and the most volatile. One would be on the mark to say a white whistle can never be normal. They have given everything to the Abyss, but the Abyss will give back. Anyway, Riko wants to find her mom, so fuck her friends, they'll figure it out. She's got shit to do. Her mom still owes her like a bunch of birthday gifts. Never mind that it's likely that it's only been like a week down there for that crazy bitch. Riko's gonna find out for herself where she ran off to. It's kind of obvious at this point that mom didn't forget where the house was after buying the milk. But how the fuck is a dumbass 12-year-old orphan who's never gone beyond the first layer supposed to get to the bottom? With her wits alone? I think not. You'll definitely die in one of innumerable unthinkable ways. Well, somebody dropped their Astro Boy real doll and he shoots lasers and shit, so we're good to go. I'm feeling pretty sure about it. Some are calling him Reg, and it's not just Riko, turns out. What's that about? Some other nerds are calling him an Blade, an ancient relic outclassing the rest so much that nobody even knows what the fuck it is. Guys, it's not that hard. He's a sapient robot or cyborg maybe. How's that harder to understand than a bell that shifts time? Anyway, let's go. Layer 2 is fun because when a novice like Riko goes here, they're pronounced suicidal and the rescue team loses interest. Cool! Because it's that first step into really being a crazy person for going deliberately, they call it the Forest of Temptation. Its ecology is vast and diverse. Its dense forest decides closer to the bottom that if you're here, your head must be on upside down, so we'll grow that way to help help you out. Society is all but behind you now, and it's suddenly a lot shittier to give up and go back. You'll definitely get a migraine and vomit, and you probably won't be able to feel your arms and legs too good while you're shitting your pants. Yeah, maybe should have thought a little harder about this. The animals are getting more hostile too. The monkeys greet you by throwing rocks, the birds are prone to sucking your innards out and mimicking your voice so they can eat your friends too, and the hippos will, kill you. Did you know these apparently come from the outside of the abyss originally? Who the fuck imported a hippopotamus? And how even? But nothing too complicated down here. Certainly nothing your robot boy couldn't almost incinerate you by missing and essentially save you by accident from. We take those. If you're lucky enough to get to the end cap of the layer, you'll be greeted by the only current sign of human life around, the Seeker Camp, a checkpoint for the more well-seasoned raiders. Here you can meet a little boy we're thinking might be on the fence about it, along with his caretaker, Ozen the Immovable. Our first real encounter with a white whistle. When you're as good at diving as her, you get a cool title like that. Riko's mom, Lyza, is known as the Annihilator. Sounds scary. Anyway, Ozen, I'll talk more about her later, but her thing is being the Incredible Hulk, implanting enough strength-enhancing artifacts into herself to allow her the ability to level a castle single-handedly if she's feeling it. Or, you know, fling Reg around like a hamster in a sock for a good while to relieve her stress. Oh, and also test him or something. She's got a big heart, I promise. It's funny, but it's easy to assume after a while that Ozen might be the sanest white whistle you'll run into down here. That's a good sign. Do you think descending the abyss so that Ozen will punish me is an acceptable enough mission statement for a cave raider? No, I was also thinking no. Layer 3 is a little underwhelming to stare at. The Great Fault, named first because those who travel here absolutely have a great fault in their character, but also because it's a sheer cliff on all sides one can only really navigate by finding the cracks in the wall to sleep in on the way down. There's a bunch of flat gerbils you can pet on your tourist walkthrough. You can also skin them and eat them because you're probably running out of food by this point and the rocks don't look very appetizing. Other than that, you're likely to get eaten by a gigantic flying reptile of some sort if you poke your head out into the open trench, some of which think it's a good idea to periodically fly their asses all the way up to the first layer to snack on children. What an asshole! And if climbing back up this fucking thing didn't look like a big enough pain in the ass all on its own, you, unlike the animals around here, are liable to temporarily become so out of it, you literally suffer psychosis, hallucinations and all. Yeah, try this rock climbing wall out while snake kaiju try and eat you and your suddenly manifested dead family members won't stop telling you that the government is conspiring to put aliens in your brain. There are some fun hideaways though, like the remnants of a pirate ship that clearly forgot their equipment works best in the ocean instead of a boundless pit. Layer 4 is where the naming conventions become impossible to twist in some way that demonstrates how unhinged you are for coming. It's just an assumption made about you at this point. The Goblet of Giants is where this heart of exploration really blooms. A true land of juxtaposition. It is a fascinating and enchanting otherworldly landscape where you will find wonderment beyond anything imaginable on the surface. Easily the coolest layer to me. I adore the look of the flat creepers with their glowy hot tub water. I have like a fetish for waterfalls or something too. They're so pleasant and relaxing. Take me to a waterfall if you're trying to vamp me. But maybe not those ones here because the animals on the 4th layer may resemble something you can imagine on the surface, but they sure as fuck don't act like it. Here our up to now very fortunate neophyte heroes are shown the true nature of the curse of the abyss. A force field that fills every bit of volume the abyss has to offer, manifesting as generally invisible layers of thin energy or something that allows one to easily bust through going down, but creates an increasing strain of ascension the further down you go and the more of it piles on top of you without your explicit awareness. Important to note, if you want to head back up now, you'll feel full body pain and disorientation so drastic it makes you bleed out of every orifice you have. Fun. The animals are adapted to sense it because it's so fucked up around here, and because they can see the air move better than you can, they can basically predict the future when trying to murder you. You can get a better understanding of this if you come face to face with this big porcupine thing, an orb piercer. One of my favorite hazards of the abyss, the orb piercer can, like I mentioned, see what you're going to do before you do it, move with astonishing speed, stab through metal with its myriad spines, and inject you with a venom so deadly you'll be dead quite quickly unless you remove the affected area of your body entirely. This is what Riko and Reg face when they unknowingly insult the apex predator by wandering into its territory. And this is where Maiden Abyss stops fucking around and shows you just how much danger you're actually in when you delve in. Maiden Abyss is not for the faint of heart. You already know this, I imagine, if you're watching this video, but the agony, terror, and pressure these kids are faced with by now is delivered slowly in graphic detail to hammer in the point that you do not want to piss around here without preparation. It's a genuinely breath-holding set of trials to witness, and it's literally the tamest punishment the Abyss offers our characters when we really get down to it. What the fuck? But it sure does invest you. If you aren't scared off by now, you know you're strong enough to face this gorgeous hellscape. With the tension at an all-time high, the best character, Nanachi, steps in to make sure there's a plotline to go back to. With Riko in Nanachi's care, we get a big backstory arc about why Nanachi's a fucking rabbit. For the sake of covering my bases, Nanachi is understood by the mangaka Akihito Tsukushi to be sex and gender ambiguous. It's never made exact to us, and from what I can tell, Tsukushi says we can imagine. We can interpret this in many ways. I take it to mean that it's kind of up to the viewer to take this in whatever direction they feel comfortable with, and Nanachi does not seem to mind either way. So like what I'm trying to say is I'm going to refer to Nanachi as a girl here, and if you really hate me for that, that's okay, but that's how I perceive the situation, and I'm not interested in making anybody upset about it. Anyway, Nanachi is an orphan who nobody would care about if they went missing. Sounds familiar. Who was then taken in by a figure significantly more powerful than her and experimented on in order to finagle some extra information about the curse of the abyss. Yes, this is the part where children are shoved into capsules and catapulted from the 6th layer back up so they can be observed melting into soupy husks of their former selves. Hollows. Yeah, remember that thing I said about losing an arm being the least punishing obstacle? Yeah. Nanachi is special though because she made friends with this cheery girl Mitty. Attachment is generally considered a terrible idea in the Abyss, however, because anything you give to the Abyss, you are given back with the mindset of a genie. In this case, affection and attachment to yourself and the world around you can physically impact your resistance to the 6 layers curse, which by the way is described as the loss of humanity or just death. You cannot make it back home from the 6th layer without at minimum permanently altering your body, but more likely being trapped in a shapeless body and eternally experiencing pain until you're put down by another cave raider. Because Nanachi and Mitty care for each other, the experiment pushes more of the force field on half of the rocket elevator, Mitty's half, causing her to become exceptionally immortal and cursed to live like this right after begging for death because of how much it hurts to transform like this. Nanachi receives what some call the blessing because of Mitty's protection essentially, and manages to hold on to her human intellect but is given a body more in line with the ways of the Abyss, now wielding the ability to actually see the force field like an orb piercer does. And like I know her origin is a tragedy, but Nanachi's so cute. I love her eyes. It doesn't help that her verbal quirks and astoundingly distinctive voice are both highly recognizable and charming. I digress. She escaped her captors sometime later, carrying Mitty with her, after being coerced into helping with further experimentation for a while, much of which involved torturing Mitty to understand better her immortality. And now she lives in the 4th layer trying to find ways to put Mitty out of her misery, and then possibly kill herself because she's kind of out of ideas for what the point in being alive is when she feels Mitty is freed. That is until Reg and Riko ask her to come with them, offering her the chance to continue exploring the Abyss like she used to want to before everything went to shit. Under the one condition, of course, that Reg uses his all-destroying laser blaster to send Mitty to the Shadow Realm for good. This works out pretty well, and oh god, I don't want to cry anymore. With the best companion anyone could really ask for on this impossible adventure in tow, on to Layer 5. The precipice of the fall nobody can escape once initiated. Here you can go back, but you'll dissociate from reality entirely as your proprioception is completely stripped from you and you start to harm yourself in your unfathomable confusion. It is not widely recommended to try your luck. This is the Sea of Corpses, a freezing wasteland atop a shadowy sea 10 times the width of the town above the Abyss, Orth, and filled to the brim with heinous monsters and densely packed skeletons. To traverse it to the bottom is a voyage through the river Styx because you have officially crossed to the other side and you will never come back. It's not the most complicated place to be while there, although you might find yourself predated on one of the few land-dwelling beasts, a nest of hextuple-tailed giant scorpions that'll melt you from the inside out. That is, of course, if you didn't get eaten from the inside out by bugs pretending to be flowers and nesting in your forcefully still living carcass that you can be lucky enough to spot right before making it here. To pass through the Sea of Corpses is actually very straightforward. There's an ancient altar on site with a mysterious submarine that'll gently carry you to the bottom if you're really feeling like you hate seeing the sun. Oh, but one problem, well, two actually. First, the altar only listens to you if you're a white whistle. Otherwise, you're a pussy who hasn't truly sacrificed yourself to the Abyss body and soul, and the entire complex is asking you to figure it out because you ain't getting in wearing those shoes. Second obstacle, this is the location of the lab where Nanachi was totally fucked over, the Edo front, by the white whistle mad scientist and genuine psychopath Bondrewd the Novel, the Sovereign of Dawn, ushering in a new age of totally fucked up shit that may or may not help the world unlock the mysteries of the Abyss, but will definitely cost the lives of many, many children. Outside of that though, he's a cool dude that I'm sure your mother would be proud to see you bring home for dinner. I take this to mean he's also the guy entrusted with watching over the cave raiders who make it this far. It might help to imagine him like Ozen, except the Insanometer's little knob was turned to the max so quickly it snapped off. I'm sure he'll just let us by. He definitely doesn't have some crazy horseshit idea that'll impose on the gang. Anyway, he kidnaps Reg for a penis inspection and passively threatens Nanachi into helping him again so that Riko and Reg can pass by. die. Also, he has a daughter named Prishka he brought back from the brink of death who just absolutely adores him. I'm sure nothing horrendous will happen to her. She teaches Riko that she can somewhat safely tolerate the fifth layer's curse by sniffing her pet thingy Menya and surrendering all of her senses to his detection of the force field kind of remotely. Anyway, learning from the experiments on Nanachi, Bondrewd betrays Prishka's trust right about now to turn her into a protective love capsule of mega potency so that he may receive the blessing like Nanachi. Oh my fucking lord, he turned that little girl into a briefcase. Menya celebrates this tremendous loss by lapping up some of her organ juices. Also, Reg went ballistic at some point by plugging a big electrical power source into his asshole and overloading his system. They kill Bondrewd for like the fourth time, I don't know, because he's duplicated himself to the point where he's not even remotely human anymore anyway, explaining his extra sociopathic demeanor when he's affronting God. But because Bondrewd transformed with Prishka's love, his mind was kind of altered to be a little more loving via her influence, and so he declares that it's now his goal to see the children Prishka befriended move forward. Yeah, okay, buddy, whatever you say, just stay the fuck away from me, please. Well, at least he's definitely gone now, and there's more of them. Quick, get in the fucking submersible. Wait, key detail, I'm botching this. A white whistle falls out of Prishka's discarded casing. It is Prishka, and it's also Riko's white whistle. Prishka really wanted to go on this adventure with her new friends, but it's a little hard to do that if you're a blob within a box. Thankfully, white whistles are literally people who have given their entire body over to the abyss for the sake of another's safe travels. I don't know how this works exactly, but the whole abyss gives back to those who give everything to it is at play, to say the least. And if this is starting to sound like surrealist horror, it's because it is, and we haven't even fucking gotten started, my man. Alright, little girl who is also a mutilated blobby who is also a magic whistle, let's get this show on the road and let's never come back. To cross into the sixth layer is an act known as one's last dive. You will never be seen again and you will never leave the abyss. What compels somebody to make this ultimate gamer move, you ask? This is where Made in Abyss officially stops simply being about the heart of exploration and discovery. It's been touched upon that those who make it this far have truly needed to dedicate their all to the abyss. You are not looking to understand the abyss. You are hoping to understand yourself now. You hope the abyss can provide answers, can give you something you've been searching for, something unnameable and impossible. You don't belong on the surface. You never did. That's why you're here. You were homesick. Welcome home. This is Shoro, the capital of the unreturned, the golden city, and there's nothing to spend your fortune on. Shoro is, by all evidence, an alternate planet, home to beasts with destructive potential beyond any of your sensations. Towering turbinid dragons will hunt you with the relentlessness of an orb piercer should you be foolish enough to enter their territory. Armed with intuition bordering on prophetic, proportions larger than any land-walking being on the surface, pointed blade feet, volatile toxic scales, projectile explosives, and the ability to travel in 3 dimensions with zero concern for the curse. If that doesn't get you, perhaps a flying colony of corrosive jellies will latch onto you and slurp you up like candy. Well, maybe when you're done running from that, you can refresh yourself with some of the only potable water in the area, a masquerading organism itself, hoping to trick you into imbibing so that it can reproduce, using your body as a makeshift metallic bowl you can shit more eggs into and continue the cycle. You are truly spoiled for choice when it comes to being mauled. Keep your eyes on the ground, however, because it's prone to geothermal explosions of toxic emissions, whereas the sky may introduce itself to you with molten iron rain, a phenomena I last heard something akin to from the planet Jupiter. Congratulations on your new permanent residency in paradise. This is where we all, at last, find ourselves for the time being, and many times before, misfits and outcasts have navigated the globe with similar means, seeking their own arcane destinies here. That's why in Shoro, this inescapable esoteric depth, we are far from alone. We might run into a large, curious robot, for instance, who for 5 minutes doesn't know what we're saying until suddenly it does. It's an interference unit, something that used to be a little more common down here, but not all of them are so great at repelling the Netherworld's denizens. It's unclear who put them here. In fact, it seems they themselves are pretty lost about that whole line of questioning, but they seem confident that they're here to interact with and learn about everything. The interference units, as it turns out, are supposed to be somewhere on every layer, but that doesn't seem like it's been the case in reality for quite some time. But overall, they're very chill, a welcome change in pace after the complete fucking train wreck we lived through to get here. They'll help look for resources, teach you what they've figured out long before you, and some of them might even protect your life in the event that the local wildlife decides you're food. But what makes the 6th layer exceptional lies within its artifacts, power that no surface inhabitant could ever toy with. Artifacts that function beyond convention and alleviate your corporeality from your sense of self to guide you into a more purposeful abstraction. One might say that here, the abyss works in mysterious ways. Search for what you're looking for and you may just find find it, but you'll play by the Abyss's rules. Make your wish, don't forget to withhold compromise, stay honest, preferably think innocuously if you can, otherwise your gains will go loosely realized. Long ago, Ganja, a group of wanderers, dreamed themselves of seeing the Golden City. They didn't know, of course, that they would never leave. At least not all of them knew. Their leader was Wazikan, a man of resolve, but even he has his limits. He's also known by some to be clairvoyant, and he knows the city exists. Along for the ride is Belaf, an intensely insightful and observant gentleman also seeking answers beyond his scope. And Vueko, a young lady whose confidence has been trampled, one whose value can be seen by anybody but herself. But finally she has a place among nomads. They make it, but not without casualties. And when they get there, there's no plan. There can't be, because none among them could tell you where they were going. Trapped, with no leads on how to proceed, they determined that their best course of action is to settle here and make the most of their actuality. This goes about as well as you'd expect considering all that horrible shit I mentioned earlier, but surviving here is now their own goal, and Wazikan isn't known for his discontinuation. Let the cradle of desire run its course, see if the purest of us can rectify this. But purity costs wisdom, and even the most uncontaminated in the group may be wiser than anticipated. Irumyuui is sterile, a native of the island who now belongs with Ganja because of her tribe's incompatible beliefs. She's just like us. She's got baggage, and her desires stem from a reality she now understands she can never have. She wants children. Maybe then she'd be accepted. Maybe then she wouldn't have to live her only option, even if it's been kind of nice. And when you toss in stubborn and ambitious interference, you'll get what you dreamed of, but you play by the Abyss's rules. Children of the Abyss, full of pain and miracles, safety within the Abyss, full of gruesome sacrifice and delusional satisfaction. This is what it means to be a civilian in Shoro. This is IRUburu, the village of hollows, the place where people go when they don't belong anywhere else. Give your all to IRUburu and you will have your wish. Nothing more. And in exchange, you can never leave. All this to say, Wazukian turned this little girl into a town, and now you can live in Shoro so long as you're cool with this spin on the blessing and also living inside the remnants of a cursed child. Yeah, this is peak. This is where it gets fucked up beyond innovation. And this is the kind of fucked up you can't enact without supernatural intervention. Wowee. And Vueko, by the way, couldn't really get behind that, but Irumyuui couldn't possibly go on without her. So watch from below, Vueko. Try not to make a scene. So we've made it here, the village of hollows in the present day, whatever day that is. I really find it difficult to express how much more alien this is than everything that preceded it. Meet Majikaja, our tour guide through IRUburu. He's a friendly hollow whose mechanical form conceals his true identity, a gaseous being. He'll help Riko find Prushka, who by the way was nabbed while she was sleeping. That's okay though, the thief apparently just wanted Prushka to feel more comfortable in her own skin? Can I call it skin? So now she looks like this. And she's unlocked snazzy new powers that make Reg turn faster and shinier. Look, they even have money here, I think. Value, they call it. I have no idea how this literally works, but there you have it. But don't take anybody's shit, because otherwise the souls of Irumyuui's dead children will fuck your shit until your value is brought back down to a balanced level from what you stole. Don't have anything of value on you? That's okay. We'll just take your fucking legs and eyes. You are value, especially if you're a human child. Everybody here is clamoring for one of those, and only some of them appear to be interested for reasons that likely caused their initial ostracization. Still, gun to my head, I'd rather hang out with the guy who was shunned and derives value now from actually eating turds. Don't worry, you don't have to eat feces. There are hollows here that actually know how to cook, I'm pretty sure, and even speak languages that make sense to us. Right, important thing to mention, they have their own language in Hollowtown that I imagine is based partially on the old languages of travelers and natives melding together. It even has its own structural system described to us in which words can mean multiple things at different percentages depending on use. Like how a bunch of stuff in Japanese is contextual, except here it's plainly described as a word meaning 30% welcome, 20% come in, and 50% I'll kill your entire family. Something like that. Needless to say, not only is this the most spectacularly interesting location the series has conjured up, it holds an incredible amount of depth. It seems every aspect of a culture is represented here to show us how similar it is to any other part of the world, yet entirely unfamiliar. Wazukyan now looks like this, and he's still one of the leaders. Interestingly, he still appears to have every aspect of his personality intact, which is unlike the majority of hollows living here who have offered everything of their previous selves in exchange for their peculiar indulgences. Like this guy who just lives for having small things walk all over him. He's a genuine hero. My guess is that Wazukyan remains the same mentally because the desires that drive him have always been focused. He never wants to give in fully, and now that he's established a society in Shoro, he's already living his remaining dreams, and his new physical form only allows for that to be easier, literally controlling what he needs to with his many hands. Belaf is a big skeleton snake now. More on him later, he's fascinating. There are those, however, that kind of agree with Vueko that it's totally fucked up to rely on a pseudo-living little girl as a resource. A city of Dis, wherein her her ghostly children uphold economic law. The loudest protester is who the Hollows call the embodiment of value, the Princess of Hollows and Irumyuui's final child born from a third cradle of desire, Faputa. She does the opposite of what most of the children do and does not die. In fact, she's apparently incapable of it, and she's fucking pissed. The Hollows worship her because they all exist as an extension of Irumyuui at this point, so they have no choice, but Faputa couldn't think of them less mutually if she tried. Her entire reason to be, in her mind, is to destroy those that used her mother for their own benefit. The ultimate balancing, you could say, the being destined to return everything that was given by the Abyss, as all things eventually do. Oh, and she knows Reg. Yeah, big breakthrough here. She remembers all kinds of stuff about Reg that Reg doesn't. Even the fact that his name is actually Reg, and not just because Riko loved her dog. I mean, I'm thinking that must mean Lyza also loved that dog, but could be a red herring. She also wants to go on an adventure with Reg because he apparently said they could before he up and forgot everything. The jerk. But before that, he's also meant to help Faputa dismantle every organism in IRUburu by letting her in with his incinerator. She hasn't figured out another way inside the village. Meanwhile, Nanachi's on her own spiritual path of discovery as she finds Midi is still fucking alive because Bondrewd had her cloned and sold to Belaf. When does the suffering end? So for a good while here, Nanachi sells her soul to Belaf to keep Midi safe, only being released when the fan just splatters diarrhea all over the place and Reg, trying to help free Nanachi, incites all-out chaos. An unconscious and monstrous representation of Vueko's abuser acting as IRUburu's immune system and fucking shit up. And because nobody could settle down and talk, Reg was forced to just give Faputa what she wants and blow a hole in the wall. Cue Faputa reciting an edgelord speech about revenge she's been reworking for years, waiting for this moment and then going on a total rampage, shredding hollows that are simultaneously fighting for their lives in fear and creaming their pants in joy that their princess has graced them with her presence. Now, of course, Reg tries to stop this, but he's a bit too idealistic in thinking he can just reason with an animal child knowing nothing but hate the majority of her existence. With the village falling to pieces, that pesky force field has shown its ugly face once again, and the Hollows here can't live in that sort of atmosphere any longer now that they've become Irumyuui's internals. Now we can have a tearful goodbye with Midi again, but not before Belaf imbues Nanachi with all of his worldly knowledge, foreseeing his end is near, and Belaf's pet Hollows give Nanachi a new blue hat made from non-perishable outside of the village goods. They're off to help fend off Faputa, which Belaf assists with by using his only remaining human memories to make fragrant gas and spit into Faputa's face, allowing Faputa her one opportunity to actually understand who the Hollows, Vueko, and her mother are. Still though, she's convinced this is her obligation. Her mental breakdown cut short by a bunch of those vicious animals living in the 6th layer I mentioned making their way inside to just pile on top of the rioting. A now very confused Faputa starts dealing with fighting like 10 monsters at once before a turbaned dragon sends her flying like a ragdoll across the map. Here, on their own terms, the villagers start to feed themselves to Faputa to become part of her ultimate value as well as ensure her continued viability. While Faputa ruminates about what the fuck she's really meant to do and Belaf's final request that she enjoy her own adventure and one day see her own value for what it is, she casually just eats basically everybody and they're totally into it. She's super put on the spot, needing to do something it seems she's never sat down and tried. Thinking, why does she have to suddenly come to terms with the fact that everybody around her is more complicated than she realized? She had her mission, so why does everybody have to have so much purpose behind them now? And what's Faputa's once this is all over? That's all fine and good, she thinks to herself as she entrusts the remaining major character Hollows with getting Reg and his friends out of town while she demolishes her mother. That sounds fucking bad when I say it. Rage, confusion, regret, sadness, maybe even fond recollection all wash over her as Faputa finally completes her solemn task. And then almost dies and still thinks about if it would have been better for her to have eaten Majikaja, who by the way is now a bigger bug car and is carrying Riko and pals. This is his 3rd transformation. That's okay, Reg will save her. Oh god, this has been a lot harder to recap than I thought. Did I mention Vueko accidentally wandered into the force field and unceremoniously melted halfway? She's with the group too because Nanachi now knows who she is and wants to guarantee she can have at least some level of closure with Faputa, who also now knows who she is because of Belaf. Everything about Vueko is just a fucking tragedy, man. Riko gives closure to this dumb baby, Maaa. That's all he says, Maaa. That's been following her around this entire time, which I failed to mention, before he too disappears now that there is no village. Finally, Majikaja also disappears while doing what he loved, inhabiting another body, Faputa's, being the last hollow she eats and possessing her to protect everybody from falling debris before he's absorbed into her for good. Even more, finally, Nanachi reintroduces Vueko to Faputa, who manages to just make me want to go to bed forever with this heart-wrenching final talk between them about who Faputa's mother was from the only remaining human from that time's perspective, how much Faputa now sees that Irumyuui cared for Vueko as the only person who she ever felt accepted by, and how utterly full of adoration, misery, remorse, and self-flagellation Vueko is looking back on Irumyuui. She thanks Irumyuui for keeping her human, for allowing Vueko to see her final moments, and for changing Vueko as a person. and then dies. Faputa gives her a proper burial instead of her usual disposal of things via her stomach as a means to denote that this girl belongs not to her, but her mother and her mother alone. God, that sucked to watch. And not like sucked because it's bad, sucked because this series continuously tears my emotions out of me no matter how much I try to repress them. Anyway, Faputa's gonna join the party now, and I think we're about to piece together the path to the 7th layer, which I can only imagine at this point is a hell surpassing even the most atrocious and bizarre postulations ever conceived. At least we have a superhuman Giga Destroyer on our side. God help us all. I said it before, but the Golden City arc we just explored together feels so much like a transfiguration from the more simplistic themes of the first season. Yes, that cyclical nature and insurmountable challenge within the abyss has been omnipresent, but now we've factually gone to the other side, our core purposes having figuratively done so as well. Season 1 was such an entrancing look into researching the abyss and growing alongside it to find your own path and devote yourself to it. Then Season 2 comes here to twist those themes, demanding introspection from those who have endeavored to be here. How do you as a person define value? What could you possibly value that would bring you to this point? Who defines your value? When do your values change, if ever? Is value found in a mission statement or something else? And what happens when your value becomes reliant on others? Can you really understand the value of others? It's not exactly a concrete idea down here. Nothing seems to be, so there's a million ways we can approach this. I like to look at characters to see how their personal development and interactions convey this to us. First, let's look at Riko real quick. Riko is an inspiring character much of the time. She's intelligent, innovative, and more driven to achieve her goals than anybody else, with possibly the exception of Faputa's desire to murder. Early on, we see Riko learn so much, and we see her time and time again let absolutely nothing alter her trajectory, even sacrificing her physical well-being if it means carrying on. And while she's strategic, she's certainly not without fault. It's that very drive that leads her astray at times too. It motivates others to see her so full of vigor despite the increasingly heavy odds against her, but internally, Riko is seemingly ignorant to what actually makes her tick. This is so prevalent in fact that when speaking with Ozen forces her to question her very existence by revealing that Riko is partially a life of the abyss itself, and that in her half-alive infantile state, she was mindlessly drawn to the center. Riko has to wonder why she does what she does. Is it really just her mother calling out to her? It's very hard to say, and this is something that has room to expand. Riko also comes across as flat at times because of her tunnel vision, but she represents perfectly both the unending curiosity and boundless stupidity that it takes to be a white whistle. She is a little quick to forget that she's a 12-year-old, resilient as she is, and it can be hard to see her take risks that could halt everything if she's not lucky, essentially. Perhaps the abyss is candidly on her side. That being said, I feel I got almost all of that out of the first season, and in the second season she expands upon this development in very minimal, somewhat redundant ways. She is consistent, but it would not hurt to see this go challenged a bit more. I think this season was not as much about her as it was about a grander mechanism at play. I have little doubt we will learn more of what it means to be Riko. Reg is kind of an indecisive dope, but it's hard to blame the guy. He doesn't know a damn thing about who he is and what he's meant to do. Riko influences him. Probably not coincidentally, considering it would be really embarrassing for Reg if Riko is not the thing he came all this way to retrieve. And without him, really, Riko would have died by layer 2 at the latest. Kid can't catch a break though. How many times are people going to pull his wiener or shove things up his ass? It's like everybody he meets tries once. Leave the boy alone. Reg's journey is pretty straightforward. He's discovering himself in a very tangible way and represents that yearning for self-discovery that comes with the territory of leaving the surface forever. Slowly, he regains his memories by digging deeper into himself and deeper into the abyss. And with his memories, his confidence grows that he must go forward, frustrating as it can be. He cares deeply for those he protects, Gaburoon recognizing that if something were to happen to Riko because of Faputa, Reg would never be able to forgive her, yet doing everything he can to make things work for the best even in those situations. A true bleeding heart. There's not much yet to know about Reg, but the more he grows, the more we unlock the mysteries of the netherworld. Vueko is a newcomer in Season 2, who we became intimately familiar with, learning all about her terrible life and its far and few between moments of some semblance of happiness before her pitiful demise alongside the severely malformed Irumyuui. Ingrained in her that she is worthless, she seeks the abyss to find if sincerely the Golden City can make even her valuable. As with everything the abyss offers, she does learn her value, only to have it twisted until wholly unrecognizable. Irumyuui attaches herself to Vueko as her stand-in mother, and so when Irumyuui suffers her inevitable fate, Vueko never forgives herself for the inadvertent role she played. The only person who felt they needed Vueko, and even up until the very end never lets lets her go, death not excluded as Faputa verbally surrenders Vueko's soul as Irumyuui's. Vueko's story is somewhat cautionary for those looking to the abyss to fill a void too barren of its own originality, I feel. Vueko came here with no intentions and only realized what could have made her happy once it was too late. Alongside the rest of Ganja, her compromises with her journey and uncertainty with her ideals and decisions carried a price too prohibitive to overcome. But even still, with her beautiful dark eyes foretelling of the only direction she could ever envision, she finds a warmth given to her by the shadowy abyss in Irumyuui's love for her. Now, Nanachi, I feel like I have the most to say about her because she's such a fascinating and lovable character. However, I had to walk away from this video for a while starting around right here, and so I feel like I forgot half of what I was trying to say because I'm a Neanderthal who writes notes like I have somewhere to be when in reality I don't. But a video of mine also isn't complete without me spilling my entire stream of consciousness all over the place, making a fucking mess, so I'm gonna start going any second now and probably never make any addendums outside of my dreams. Nanachi is a lot like Vueko, but a story told in a splinter timeline in which things still go disturbingly wrong, but lead up to a present that isn't utterly riddled with despair. She grows up relatively directionless, never knowing anything resembling a home and only guided by a tossed book telling tales of the all-pervasive abyss. She never knew the taste of a home-cooked meal and certainly never had the chance to feel wanted by others. Where Vueko journeyed to the abyss as a default for her party, Nanachi, despite everything, still had ambition. The abyss is the only spark, and no matter what the circumstances are that brought her there canonically, she fantasized still about what this place must be like. Surely it had to offer more than the world up here. She's tortured, undoubtedly, but give yourself to the abyss and it will provide. She learns to make a life for herself within the Goblet of Giants, discovers her own route to food preparation, questionable as it may be. But most importantly, she discovered that she can in fact be wanted, does deserve to receive affection, and for the first time, she envisioned a twisted picture of what her purpose may be. But her resourcefulness and honest heart still find their place even when this purpose beats her into submission. Could these people really allow her a genuine shot at fulfilling her dream? Nanachi, I feel, is a bringer of fortune, constantly showing up where her knowledge and skills can be put to use, and more forwardly, de-escalate whatever shit's going down. She's a pleasant smelling source of comfort with a wise, laid-back, somewhat sarcastic, but compassionate personality. She's somebody you can rely on. When Nanachi shows up, time after time, she makes the world a better place, never realizing it for herself. Around here is where Nanachi's story becomes the anti-Vueko. Instead of having her fate determine her outcomes until death is her only reprieve, she factually turns away from death and chooses to be stronger and more valuable than anything in her previous years would have had her believe. This devotion to her path rewards her with love and true direction. It doesn't matter what's at the bottom of the abyss as long as she can make the trip alongside them, even if she faces setbacks. Her story is also one of deep loss and of drastic change. Unlike the halls of IRUburu, her desires do not define her, and she never loses herself completely when challenged with seemingly insurmountable hurdles. She's said to smell good, smell like the abyss, some describe it, and I think it's because she represents what it actually means to be a child of the abyss. Desire is never enough when you don't have dedication. With both, Nanachi turns the tides within the sea of corpses and arises finally at home. Finally somebody who chooses her own descent. Finally somebody who says goodbye to the only remains of her past because she wants to, until they meet again. Faputa, again, tells a story not so different. Everybody down here has one thing in common, as I've mentioned, that they don't belong anywhere else. The citizens of IRUburu all want a child. They all have some part of them bent to the will of the village they have given everything to, aside from their worldly desires. Faputa, being the only living child of the village, is what they all define as value itself, but because she's not one of them, she's never known desire to begin with, excluding the instinctual will to dismantle everything the halls of IRUburu stand for. They love her like a sacred, untouchable daughter, and she resents them unconditionally. It is only when she comes across her first challenges that she is forced to gain perspective and wonder what lies beyond her tunnel vision. She's changed by the ones who shake everything up when they pass through. Honestly, you could say change is always their fault. Through finally empathizing with loss and seeing the scale of her story for what it actually is, Faputa also must say goodbye to this past and see clearly for once that, guarded by her reliance on her only known goal, she has been ignoring what it means to be herself and what her mother had hoped for her. In the end, she does complete her goal, and she learns that Belaf's last gift spoke the truth. In her heart of hearts, she wanted to go on that adventure with Reg. She never let that go, and she is fortunate to have had so many protecting her while she figured that out. Faputa shows the importance of having allies, and her allies have always been very strong. She is what's left of both Vueko's and Irumyuui's hopes and dreams. She is their legacy, and the most literal child of the abyss there is. Vueko and Irumyuui gave everything so that Faputa could find what they were looking for, but no longer a simple extension of themselves. For once, their lineage knows belonging. Among those allies was Gaburoon. Now, Gaburoon, he's like... but actually he can talk. The retainer for the Princess of Value, he too gives everything for her sake. As an interference unit, he lives a life not unlike Faputa's, one in which he doesn't know why the fuck he's doing anything or for who it matters, but knows he must do it anyway. But Faputa herself changes him, perhaps seeing himself in her, the potential to find answers he didn't even know he might be looking for. So in the end, he chooses his own path, having protected Faputa for so long, and he dies so that she may live. Faputa is also his legacy, and it's a legacy that cost him, like everybody else, everything. Presumably he gave up on his one fucking purpose just to see her journey for as long as he could, his primary directive to learn and collect. All of it lost, likely never reported to anybody that commanded it. He certainly didn't know who that may have been. For Faputa's sake, nothing would be worth withholding. For Faputa, this is where she really begins to grow. As we approach the end of our dive, I feel it's worth exploring some of the more important hollows of IRUburu. While they have a tendency to wear their reasons for being on their sleeves, and they all share one trait in giving up their adventures, there are some that prominently give no definitive indication as to what their desire consists of, and as such, their choices and drives are left heavily to interpretation. Belaf, for example, is a character of great importance, but why he ends up as he does isn't plainly stated. Seemingly a boy of steely resolve, the Abyss tests his sensibilities in every way, and he becomes the first to categorically break down and give up, opening the door to IRUburu and introducing the idea that Ganja's road can end here in blissful ignorance. Belaf wasn't cut out for the brutality of the Abyss. Once he felt his survival was dependent on cannibalizing Irumyuui's beloved children, there was no coming back for him. Nothing he could do would atone for his existence being granted to him as it is. So live as a shell of yourself, but more importantly, never see what you have become. Because throughout it all, Belaf's greatest sin in his eyes was enjoying the taste of Irumyuui's children. There's no way to reconcile this wish to live on and feel such pleasure ever again without the guilt and shame that is inextricably tied to it. So that's what he becomes, a dispassionate and blind leader and glutton who can freely hoard and indulge in the piquancy of Irumyuui's children, or more broadly, what they amount to, hollows. And when he senses a hollow that never ceases to be regardless of his lust, well, he'd give just about anything to have that. And through those eyes that once saw into the souls of his comrades, he now experiences nothing but his desires. This is his miracle, a reconciliation that would otherwise be impossible for him. However, Belaf is indeed fascinating because somewhere within him that resolve still burns, and those eyes can still see. Irumyuui entrusted this first hollow of the village with one sliver of his humanity. His memory of Irumyuui's true self lived on, even if his pain and guilt surrounding her did not. When Belaf finally meets Faputa, he understands why, and the last of his resolve is expended not on satiating his desire, but on exonerating himself for his wrongdoing as much as possible by realizing his end does not need to mean the end for Nanachi and Midi. By giving Faputa the final push she needed to see for herself through his eyes what was given so that she could thrive. Majikaja is unique. There's something about him that's immediately likable. Perhaps it's his soothing voice and seeming eagerness to show us the way. We don't know at the start if we can trust this alien robot, the first thing we see when introduced to the extraterrestrial IRUburu, but we kind of want to. And maybe it's because the only other choice is going on your own, but I think it's more than that. Every step of the way, Majikaja seems not just happy to help, but hungry to do so. We were talking about the guy who knew the Princess of Value was around, the one thing he is hardwired to like other than his remaining human desires, and actually struggled to decide what he should do before giving up the chance to see Faputa initially to help Riko. Although this is likely in part due to Irumyuui's imposed want for children, his decision still stands out among hollows. When Majikaja is around, he's always the one offering to assist. He mentions wanting a body, and you might be able to interpret this as part of his wish, but I think it's more complicated than that. He probably had a body when he was human after all. Majikaja is a being made of smells, a gaseous hollow who can take any vessel and utilize it as his body, and he readily refits that body to meet their needs of the occasion. I believe Majikaja's desire was to feel useful, to feel needed. I imagine in his human life he was made to believe he had no worth to others, or that he could never improve things for those around him. In this new shapeless form, Majikaja can become anything others need him to be, and he can satisfy his one true hope, that he can help, the guide to IRUburu, the mentor for those unfamiliar with the rules, and the one who will endanger himself if it means preserving the well-being of those around him, especially if they're children. We like Majikaja because he wants nothing more than to know he's appreciated. Someone else who really needs a little more appreciation around here is the secret star of the show, Maaa. Don't even think I've mentioned her up until now, but she's critical to the plotline, and crazily enough, despite being an actual fucking baby, she's got a fully complete character arc wrapped up nicely upon her untimely death. Maaa may or may not be her name, it's in fact the only word she seems to speak, thus the label, albeit albeit one she does not seem to mind. Yet the language barrier does not inhibit her ability to convey or understand. No, Maaa appears to follow along with the course of events just swimmingly, and the people around her tend to grasp what she's going for as well. She begins her personal development by wrongfully thieving Menya from Riko, commencing the balancing wherein she is rehabilitated and learns the consequences of her actions through great loss. This is a test of Maa's moral constitution. Should she choose to immaturely begrudge Riko for her punishment, she may enter a vicious cycle, losing herself to the abyss wholly. However, Maaa decides on the road to evolution, spending the majority of Riko's stay by her side to aid her, showing that she does understand the differences her behaviors can make, good or bad. She even ventures with Riko to the most forbidden place beneath the village, an act of courage superseding every hollow excluding Wazukyan. A multitude of times we witness Maaa rectify her past self by placing herself in harm's way for the sake of Riko and Menya, deeply regretting her mistake. In the final chapter, Maaa is crucial in keeping Riko safe as the village collapses. Here there is a return to the mother figure of sorts, as Riko says her goodbyes to Maaa and leaves one last eternal validation, a message stated clearly that Riko believes Maaa has more than redressed herself. She has blossomed into a hero worthy of praise. Riko hands her an unfinished homemade doll with the likeness of Maa's once greatest treasure. Her arc comes full circle, and Maaa fades away, satisfied with her path and not to be forgotten. The hollows of IRUburu, as we've established, stem from the human desire their former bodies held close. It feels obvious in some way that Maa's actions are too deliberate to exist outside of her drive to live. I believe that Maaa must have always wanted to feel accepted or wanted, similar to Majikaja and Irumyuui. Perhaps it's family Maaa is after. Or it could arise from her will to touch small fluffy things, her need to help born from the hope that Menya and her keeper may live another day. Or because Maaa has a big round ass and a phallic prolapse arm, something about buttholes. It's tough to say. I lean toward the family part since she's a baby. However, this is not an accurate assessment, at least not entirely. In this tweet by the author, it is revealed that IRUburu actually develops its own children from the same signals that alert the balancing, created as single-celled organisms that represent pure value added to the village via lurings from the outside abyss. Maaa was never human. She is one of these special hollows, but this actually enhances my belief that her drive is to feel the love and acceptance of a family because it means she is created in the image of Irumyuui and holds some mixture of values that Irumyuui did. So yeah, fun facts, didn't know most of that. Also, can I just say I think it's funny that nobody can confirm what gender Nanachi is, but for whatever reason it's basically confirmed that Maaa is female. Bunny human? Nobody knows, it's a mystery. Blob? It's obvious, you shouldn't even have to ask, she's pink. But that's the end of my 600-word dissertation on this thing. You're welcome. Thinking on the more important white whistles, I have far less to say right now compared to the previous points of discussion, but Ozen's cool. I forgot if I said everything I wanted to about her. I like that she's like 8 feet tall and scary and violent, but still somehow the most well-intentioned, helpful white whistle we know, even if she can go a little overboard. Like sure, she smacked Riko across the room, but she knew that wasn't going to be a big deal. I trust that if Ozen wanted to turn Riko into paste, she would have. Lyza is an omnipresent force in the fabric of Made in Abyss, but generally she's not impactful to the immediate story outside of tidbits we slowly pick up about her history as a hero rather than as a person. We know almost nothing about Lyza's personality really. Ozen's odd behavior certainly comes as a result in part from her care for Riko as Lyza's child. It's apparent Ozen loved Lyza and wanted to be with her exclusively, something you could interpret in a number of ways, but she personally wasn't thrilled about Lyza's marriage. A little possessive over the one person who seemed to understand her, but outwardly, Ozen honored any and all of Lyza's decisions. Outside of her relationship with Lyza, Ozen isn't the life of the party, but I'm not sure Lyza had many close connections either. Ozen probably knew her best, even if Lyza was well liked by everybody and could appear as a social butterfly on the surface. Of course, we are likely meant to draw many parallels to Riko and their shared obsession with going into the big hole forever. Bondrewd is interesting by being the literal devil, endlessly propelling everybody into turmoil, but if I'm being honest, he gets kind of old with the seemingly senseless psychopathy. I will say I adore the way the manga panels featuring Bondrewd are covered in some kind of demonic smog to tell you right away that everything this guy touches turns to ash. If Lyza is representative of wonderment and absolute resolution, Bondrewd is the uncaring cruelty of the abyss incarnate, but I struggle to see him as much else. I suppose it's worth mentioning that while he has absolutely zero regard for any semblance of human morality, he does remember the names of every child he mutilates, implying that some part of him values them. Again, not because there's any part of him that would participate in respecting their humanity, but because he literally sees them as helping the cause, and he may have no malicious intent toward anything. Discarding Prishka, for instance, is not to him an insult to her humanity, but it would mean nothing to him, and in his mind to her, to show any affection for her once her role is played because it serves no purpose outside of emotional reasoning. And Bondrewd doesn't have that. There's this one video out there that I didn't actually watch calling Bondrewd the world's greatest dad who did nothing wrong, and I don't think I could represent his character funnier than that if I tried, so yeah, he's the world's greatest dad. I need to stop adding to the script, otherwise this video is going to be a day long and nobody will sit through it. I want to make mention of of the music in Made in Abyss. It's really great and often emphasizes the enormity of the abyss and the awesome, mysterious voyage one experiences while traveling its layers. It can elicit a gentle terror, a sickly curiosity, and a lonesome but confident finality, sometimes all at once. Possibly the most essential concern of all, however, is that embracing everything the story has to offer is the fact that Made in Abyss is, in actuality, a food anime. You might say a universal constant of the abyss is disfigurement or suffering, but food is featured in just about any minute it can fit. Many an adventure overlooks the necessity of eating to survive, and Made in Abyss has so much fun exploring the unique dishes one can cook up in these depths, developing multiple scenes focused completely on how preparation is done using these otherworldly ingredients. Nanachi is particularly pleased with this staple of her universe. Having eaten like absolute shit for 90% of her life, her appreciation for good food is not something she can keep to herself. Here she is in Pop Team Epic doing just that. That's cool. She is also DTF, down to fish. She goes fishing a lot, a master angler, the baddest boss bunny around. Don't worry though, equally in the spotlight is the aftermath of eating, shitting and pissing. This is reality, and in reality everybody is shitting all around the abyss. Don't be disgusted. It's natural and normal to bring this up several times. With that, our expedition on speleology draws to a close for now. What the final maelstrom dares to expose us to has yet to be discovered by anybody capable of speaking its legends to us, but someday we will explore that too together, alone where we can never be heard from again. What will you find in yourself by braving these remotest of locales? Whatever that may be, it's sure to bring many joys and aches, friends and disappearances, scares and marvels, and shit and piss. See you in the netherworld, White Whistle.